guys, today I want to talk about driving your goats. In a recent video I talked about bracing your sheep, and today we want to talk about driving your goats because there are a lot of differences and a lot of people make the mistake of driving their goats as if they were bracing their sheep and kind of doing it the same way. So driving your goats is basically a posture that you're putting your goat into where they're flexing their muscles and looking right for the judge for the show ring. And so if you're a showman and you're showing market goats, this is the kind of thing that you will be doing on show day. So look up some videos, some pictures of goats, and then hopefully this explanation will really explain the technique of what you're doing. And if you need better explanation or anything more succinct or step-by-step, I really recommend my book. I wrote a book on showing market goats, and that's called Show Your Way to the Top, and you can find it at my website, mastershowmanship.com. You can also find it on Amazon. Both places are good, but that book will really help you. And what I'm talking about today is driving, so you can look at that at chapter 4, page 27, kind of goes through a lot of what I'm going through, but anything else in that chapter will be super helpful to you, kind of adds to what I'm talking about. So some of what I talk about in my book, and one thing that I really focus on is head control, and so that'll be my first point today. Head control is the way that you get your goat to drive, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to get that collar, and you're going to kind of wrap your fingers into the collar and keep your hand on that goat's head, and they're going to lift that goat's head upward and back towards their tail at the same time. These two motions have to be at the same time. And if you want a really good reminder or a really good explanation of what I'm saying, then again, I really do recommend that chapter in my book because it goes into this. So you're lifting up on that head and you're lifting back, and that goat is all of a sudden going to push into you. Now, goats are different than sheep in that you're not going to feel the pressure that you will with the sheep generally. Generally speaking, the goat's is going to be a much lighter, or you might not feel it at all. And so this is where showmen make another mistake. Goats, I suppose it's so easy to just make mistakes, but they're a very technical animal to drive because of these different things. And so when you get that brace, when you start lifting up, you can even lift that goat up on the ground and back as you get that drive. And that brings me to my second point, which is the second mistake, is where you are. So the mistake showmen make is they keep their legs too far apart while they're in front of that goat, and so that goat is pushing but has nothing to push against. And the showmen don't realize this because they can't feel that push necessarily. And so what you have to do as the showman is you have to stand so close up in front of that goat, and you've got to give them your legs to push against. Remember, they're small animals, so they're not necessarily pushing against your stomach or side or a chest, right? They're pushing against your legs and knees. And so if this is your goat right here, this is you. You want your 2 feet here to be right together as close as possible and into that goat's chest, so that goat can push right against your legs and get that leverage that they need to flex all their muscles and just look showy for the judge. So you get that, you need both your legs. Some showmen will kind of put one leg behind the other, kind of like that, so they can really be in front of that goat, and never that sheep style of like stretching out like this. It's very close together. It's very important in market goats because they need that to push against you. They need that leverage. One thing, a lot of showmen, a good tip that I would give you is a lot of showmen will lean over their goat and kind of use the goat to hold them up. That is really good for these goats. They want more of you to push against, so if you're leaning that much into them, that gives them so much more of you to push against. This might seem like the goat won't like that because you're kind of almost like using them to hold you up, but the important thing is if you don't do this, it's actually going to make that goat mad. That goat will actually jump and spin and try to get out of the drive because they want that. They want as much of you pushing against them as possible because you're already giving them that pressure in that neck, right? So they're already pushing everything into you, and you doing your part really helps them to just settle into that drive and give a good flex posture to the judge, right? So that's the second point. The first point is that head control, so important. The second thing is your stance, also equally important, to be really well in front of that goat when you're standing there. And then the third point is it has to be the goat's idea. So this is something that new showmen who don't understand that first rule do a mistake that they make all the time, is that they take that head of that goat and they pull it towards them, trying to get the goat to push towards them. and that completely makes the goat want to pull backwards away from you because they don't want you to be telling them what to do and pulling them forward. Whereas when you push back, it's kind of the goat's idea to come to you and to push into you rather than you're pulling them into you and they're being, asked to push into you when you're pulling forward. It never works. So it has to be, in a sense, their idea, but in a sense, you're just remember never to pull them towards you. And then the fourth thing is how often to practice with your goats. You want to practice with your goats all the time with most showmanship practices. And my book kind of goes into walking and more of your style and setting legs and eye contact and ring awareness, all those things. But when it comes down to driving, and this is actually something that I have changed my mind on over the years, at this point, it's really important that you don't drive your goat that often. Sorry, circling back. If you're driving your goat too often, then they are going to kind of discover ways that they can kind of get out of your grip or mess you up or not want to drive as much. So the less you drive, the more willing they are to drive with you. And so this is the one area where I think you should really limit your practice with your goat and not overdo it. So what I was saying was in my book, I talk about driving your goats a lot because we want to practice everything a lot. And this is one point where I would say we kind of come to the point where most goats, don't drive them too much. You need to know your technique really well, but the driving with your goat, limit that to once or twice a week and practice other things most of the time. That's what I would recommend at this point, just because some goats just really learn to not like the drive the more you drive them. So those are some points. Check out my book if you need a little bit more expanding on that. I'll try to do some more videos so you guys can see more and hear more about goats, and I'll talk to you guys next time.